and welcome to We Are Better Together, a channel created to put the value back into relationships. I'm your host, CRJ. Let's get into it. Today I'm speaking to Alana Sharps, who is the author of Was It My Fault? And before I go into it, I want to give her an opportunity to kind of give a little background on herself as well as the book. Tell us a little bit about you, why you wrote it, and then we'll get into it.
All right, so I am Alana Sharps. I am a high conflict divorce and child custody consultant. And I wrote the book, as you stated. Was it my fault? I wrote my book based on my story of being married to a person that had narcissistic personality disorder. We were married for 16 years. And once I got out of the relationship, I endured what is called post-separation abuse. And I felt like no one understood what I was going through, not my friends, not my family, not my attorney. And I didn't want anyone else to have those feelings going through the same experience. So I wrote my book as a guide to help others that are either currently in an emotionally and verbally abusive relationship, or they have left one and they're feeling alone and non-validated.
All right, that's a lot to take in. I guess first question, say it again, what
separation abuse.
Okay. Elaborate.
So what that encompasses, it encompasses a lot of things. So when you are separating from someone that has been very controlling and abusive, that abuse does not end once you leave the relationship, especially when you share children, because their children are the last hold on you. So now they can use the legal system to control you. So you'll go through different things such as legal abuse. They'll start to file these child custody agreements where they want 100% custody of your children. They'll financially abuse. They'll start to cut off credit cards. If you've been a stay-at-home mom, they do not want to pay you post-separational support, which turns into alimony when you're actually divorced. They'll start to hide.
Let me ask you this. Were you a stay-at-home mom?
No, I was not a stay-at-home mom. I was one of the fortunate ones that had a really good job when I separated. So I was able to stand on my own. Other things.
Right. So,
yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Other things you'll.
I guess. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Other things you'll encounter as far as the children is the weaponizing of the children, counter-parenting of the children. So what do I mean by that? They will use the kids in order to get you to conform to something that they want you to do. And if you don't do exactly what they want you to do, then they'll start to file motions against you within the legal system. So they really entangle you in the legal system, and you feel that you're stressed because you're scared you're going to lose your kids. And this other person is throwing all these false allegations out there in the legal system that you are trying to fight against. And when you're trying to get medical attention for your kids, therapy for your kids, which all kids that come from abusive homes need therapy, the opposing party is very difficult in that matter as well. They don't like any of the therapists that you select. They threaten the therapist. They block care. All of this goes into the counter-parenting and weaponizing of the children. So there's different things that you go through after you leave an abusive relationship when you share kids. And I'm just touching on the surface of it.
So let me ask you a couple of questions on that, because I guess I'm not a lawyer, but I stayed at a Holiday Inn. No, I'm not a lawyer, but I read a lot. I listen to a lot of things just based on my journey with this channel and talking about relationships and the why and the why not. But from everything I've always heard, women kind of get it all in divorce, and everything what you just said was kind of almost like you had to fight. I mean, I heard a great lawyer one time say that women will always get the kids, except one, if she's dead, two, if she's a crackhead and just can't take care of them, or three, she actually signed away the rights. But other than that, a woman will always get the kids and pretty much always get what they want. So I guess you're saying the opposite, that he made it difficult in the law than on his side, but I guess elaborate a little bit.
So many years ago, yes, that was the case. That has changed. The fathers' rights movement has changed a lot with the court system. So it's not that Yeah, it's not an all-in guarantee that the mom's going to get the kids or the dad's going to get the kids. You typically see 50-50 custody agreements. That's how it is here in North Carolina, which is my home state, and in a lot of states. The
I was going to
problem
ask
is,
you that.
yep, the problem comes in is when you're dealing with a very controlling person. A lot of times they want to take 100% of the kids. Now, in my state, in order to get 100% custody of the children, you have to prove that the other party is either an alcoholic, a drug addict,
Right.
like they have to be the worst person ever, and those kids are in danger.
Like the lawyer said to me.
Yes. Yes. So what my ex was doing, because I'm not any of those things, he was going to people that we both knew and asking them to sign affidavits on the fact that I was a bad mother. He was essentially trying to get them to lie for him so that he could build his case. And he was not successful.
Okay. I was going to ask you, was he successful in that? So
Not
let me
at
ask
all.
you this. So throughout the 16 years, obviously he wasn't a good husband to you, or you wouldn't have gone down this path. Was he a good father to his kids?
My children were being abused as well. And I didn't find that out until really when I left the relationship and my kids started telling me their own stories. My oldest son, who biologically is not his, was actually being physically abused, and I knew nothing about that. I could see the emotional and verbal that was occurring. My oldest son and I both were going through that, where it was very apparent, but I did not know the physical aspect of it until I separated and my oldest son started telling me all of his stories.
And how old is your oldest son now?
He is 25.
Okay. So this was, and I guess, what year did you actually get married?
2002.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. What was the feedback from, obviously you write this book, it's not a story, you're writing this in regards to your life, and based on the title, it's apparent that. How did your friends and family feel about that? Did they feel, oh, this is great, this is good? Did they feel like, hey, maybe you shouldn't share this? How was the response from them or people who in your circle?
In my circle, everyone in my circle was very supportive. A lot of people were shocked because I didn't talk about what was going on in my marriage to a lot of people. I actually didn't talk about what was going on until the very end, when I was getting ready to leave and I needed that extra support system. So there were maybe 3 people that actually knew what I was going through before I left the marriage. Everyone else did not know. So they were shocked to read everything that occurred, because from the outside, you saw this loving family, because that was the persona that we all put on whenever we were out with family and friends. We didn't act like we were a family in, discord. We acted like a family that was happy. So most of the people were very shocked to read everything that had gone on in the marriage, but also very supportive at the same time.
Do you regret that now, looking back, of not maybe sharing? Because if you were in my circle and I read this and I didn't know, I would be upset on both ends. I'd be upset that it happened, but I'd also be upset that you didn't share it with me. And I'd be like, yo, why didn't we talk about this? I would feel a certain way. So do you regret not maybe going at it and talking to close family or close friends?
I do. Looking back on it, I regret it. But at the same time, and this is why the book is titled, Was It My Fault? I internalized a lot of things, because one thing that abusers do is they tell you, they treat you a certain way because you're either not doing something they want you to do, you're not doing something right. And they say, I'm treating you this way because of that. So throughout a lot of the marriage, I felt like I needed to do more. I needed to be someone I wasn't. I needed to do certain things in order to please this person who was never satisfied, because even when you met what he quote unquote said he needed, the bar of satisfaction kept rising higher and higher. And then when we started going into marriage counseling and he's giving his boohoo story on why he's unhappy in the marriage counselors blamed everything on me as well. So it was a lose-lose situation.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute, time out. So the marriage, because now we're talking to the professional who's supposed to be unbiased. So you're telling me you sit on the couch, he's there, you're there. He shares his story, you share his story, and the marriage counselor pointed at you?
Correct. So you have to understand that these people are very skilled manipulators, right? And they're very charismatic. So my husband is not coming in as the person that I see in the home. He's coming in as the persona that he needs to provide to the marriage counselor in order to get the marriage counselor on his side. So he's going in saying, oh, I just love my wife so much and I want things to work out and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I feel like she's not putting in a lot of effort. You know, he's saying things like this to get the empathy of the marriage counselor. Now, one thing about marriage counseling, and this is why it does not work when you're in an abusive relationship, is that they are trained to find fault in both people. They're not looking at signs of abuse. They're just looking at the faults in both people to try to get you to come together to reconcile and work on your problems.
Well,
so, yes. So we actually saw
well, wait a minute. Now that's kind of, I'm gonna push back on that because I mean, a marriage counselor is a professional. I mean, I always, you know, I've had people comment on things that I've posted, and I've actually commented and my comment is always, you need to talk to someone with certificates on the wall. Like, I'm not a professional. I have a degree, but not in that. And so you're saying now that the marriage professionals can't see through the BS because that's what they're trained to do. I'm in sales. That is my training. I can see when a customer is really a customer. Yes. Or not a customer, a prospect or a suspect. I can see through that. So you're saying the marriage counselors can't even see through that?
We saw 5 marriage counselors. There was only one marriage counselor who was actually trained in seeing the signs of abuse in a relationship, and she pointed it out to me. But I was so deep into that marriage and what was going on in the mental fog of it. When she told me that my husband was a narcissist and that he would never change, and I had 2 choices, I could either stay in the relationship and deal with it or leave the relationship, I didn't believe her. I brushed her off and said, that's not my problem, because I didn't understand narcissism at that time.
So I'm assuming that he did not want a divorce.
He did not want a divorce. That is correct.
Wow. And even though you could lay out okay, if you don't want a divorce, it's kind of like someone who says, I want to fire you. Don't fire me. Okay, well, you need to do these things right here, because you're right. You have the power to divorce, in essence, in the relationship, in the contract, in the marriage. And you lay all these things down and I'm not willing to do those, because I'm just thinking in my head, if someone wants a divorce and someone doesn't want, the person who says I don't want would be willing to do whatever it takes, correct? Not correct.
When the other person is mentally healthy and they're capable of recognizing that they have faults and they're capable of change, yes. When you're dealing with someone that has a personality disorder and they are not mentally healthy, they are not capable of change. They don't have accountability. They don't have empathy. They cannot change to someone who is willing to work on a relationship, because everything centers around them, their wants, their needs. They don't care about you at all or how you're impacted. So it's very difficult to make a relationship work with someone that has a personality disorder.
So, and you said you had one child that was not his. So obviously that's his stepson. You had how many in total?
3 in total.
3 in total. So then the other 2 were his kids, correct?
Correct.
And the youngest one is how old?
16.
16. He a boy or girl?
Boy.
Does he still have a relationship with his dad?
That is the only child that currently has a relationship with him, because we actually still have a child custody agreement. So we split time with the youngest.
Because he's 16 and he's underage.
Correct.
How did your kids respond to the book writing and everything after that?
So my kids' stories are actually in the book. When I started writing the book in 2018, which is when I left my marriage, it was all about what I had experienced. When I started going through the post-separation abuse and my kids, my older two kids, started telling me their stories, I incorporated all of that information into the book as well. So my kids' stories are in there. And I talked to my kids before I published the book, and I said, hey, I'm going to put this book out there to help other families that have gone through what we experienced. Are you okay with that? And my kids said, yes, Mom, you need to share it.
Okay, I was going to ask that.
Yeah, they said, we need other families to understand what they're going through is not okay, and we need to help others. So they were very open to sharing the book and sharing our story.
So a question for you. I think you said in the beginning that you also, part of this journey is helping other women go through what you went through and possibly other things as it relates to divorce, separation. Have you ever encountered a conversation or assisted a woman or had a conversation with a woman? I'm assuming that most of the people you talk to are women and not men, correct?
I have some men that have reached out. I've had men read my book, which was very shocking to me. But yes, mainly women, but there are some men in there as well. It's mainly women.
My question, have you ever had or had a conversation with a woman who, in listening to her story, realized that divorce is not the answer?
The people that come to me, no. When you are coming to me, your situation is very similar to mine. I have not come across anyone who has actually reached out to me that my story does not mirror theirs. The only thing that's different are the names of the people on the opposing side.
Okay, so in essence, you're listening. It's almost like you have a doctor and you have an emergency room doctor. If you're going to the emergency room, it's probably pretty bad versus a regular doctor who maybe is just seeing you for strep throat or something of that nature. Okay.
Correct.
What do you think, I guess at this point, are you anti-marriage? Are you pro-marriage? Or are you?
No, I think marriage has nothing to do with the person, right? My ex has a personality disorder. That's him as the person. If I was with a mentally healthy person, I think that you can have a very strong relationship with a mentally healthy person. Someone who can see fault within themselves. They know how to treat people. You have to be respectful to people. You have to be able to treat people a certain way. You have to give and take within a relationship. All those things that come into a healthy relationship, yes, those are great marriages. My parents have been married forever, still married today. They have a great relationship. Yes. It's when you get into relationships and marriages with mentally unhealthy people is where you encounter all of the problems that impact your mental health, right? I have no problem saying I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and that came from my marriage and all the years of trauma that I experienced within it.
So within the 16 years, when did you see a change? Obviously, you wouldn't have seen this on day one, because when he asked, you wouldn't have said yes. So when did you see? Was it year 1? Was it year 15? When did you see what the heck? When did you see that?
So the red flags started, I would say 2 weeks, and this is in my book as well. 2 weeks before we got married, he got upset with me. And I had never seen that before in our relationship. And the relationship moves very quickly with these people too, because they want to get you wrapped in and roped in and married before you actually realize the people that they are, because they give you a different persona in the dating stage. So if I step back and I look at how fast the relationship started, he moved in with me within 3 months. Within the year, we were married. So I really didn't know him. And I was in my 20s. I didn't know anything about healthy relationships or what to look out for. He love bombed me, right? So when you're going through, they call it the cycle of abuse. The first stage is love bombing, where they shower you with gifts. They, like love on you all the time. They're constantly reaching out to you. Like it's euphoria.
Isn't that what every woman wants? Everything you just said is what women want.
No, there's a healthy way. If you're love bombing the way that abusers love bomb, it's too much. It's too much too soon. You should not be sending me flowers every single day for months. You should not be texting me all day long when you're supposed to be working, calling me all day long. That is too much attention too soon. That's why it's called love bombing. It's excessive. That's the first sign.
I would agree it is excessive. I think a lot of women would call that being a bugaboo, but I will say that a lot of women probably would be okay with it, because if you're not getting any attention from a male, and then you get someone over there who's giving you more than you anticipate, some women probably would like that. But
yes,
so then you said you saw him upset.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it because those people do change. Nobody.
So you said 2 weeks. Nobody what?
Nobody can sustain that type of behavior. That's why it's called love bombing. No one can sustain that. You're not going to do that type of behavior for months and months and years. It's not sustainable. That's the first red flag for anyone. You always need to pay attention to that. You hear about love bombing now in the dating world because people now understand that's a red flag. So people look out for it.
I've never even heard the term. I've heard of being a bugaboo. I've never heard the term.
Well, you're
so you
married.
Said he got upset with
out
you.
In the dating world. People that are in the dating world right now, yeah, they are looking out for things like this, because people like me, more people are coming out. When I wrote my book back in 2021, there were not people coming out and telling their stories. I was one of the first people during that time to tell it, like, hey, like, this is a really bad relationship and this is what's going on. Now you got people on TikTok, on Instagram Reels, telling their stories very similar to mine. And love bombing is always the first red flag that they talk about.
I'm gonna look that up. Love bombing. So when you said he got upset 2 weeks before the marriage, you said what's upset? Like throwing a chair across the room, calling 911, or just?
Eyes went black, very upset, didn't want to collaborate, negotiate, like this is how it's going to be type deal. And yes, like how he reacted in the conversation actually scared me. And I stated, if this is how it's going to be in the marriage, I don't want to get married because I don't want to put up with this for the rest of my life. And all of a sudden his entire demeanor changed. He became softer, and then he changed back into the person that I had been dating. And he said, oh, it won't be like this. I take it back. It's fine. It's fine. I apologize type deal. Fake apology, because the marriage did end up being like that. But yes,
so,
it was to the point where
you
I
were
scared. Yeah.
But you said you were in your 20s.
Correct.
Late 20s, early 20s?
Mid 20s.
Mid 20s. Okay. Well, I disagree. You said you didn't know a lot. I mean, mid 20s is pretty old, and your parents, if your parents are still together and they're happy, it means you did see. I mean, my parents are still together too, so you saw. Like, we're blessed. You know, for people our age to have parents still together, it's a blessing. You know, and two parents that are still together and married, because it's a rarity. My parents are still together. My wife's parents are still together, happily together. It's a rarity. So I can't. So we both got to see what healthy looks like. Unfortunately, today the kids are not seeing that. So you did get to see that. I don't know. I guess that in all honesty, hearing that 5 different people didn't see this, that I'd want my money back. I guess if they didn't see what it is that you saw. I mean that people always say go seek therapy. And I agree with therapy. I mean, if you need it, you should go see it. There's nothing wrong with therapy. I think people should not push against it. But you also expect that the person who's offering the therapy knows what they're doing and how to assess. How to assess it. Let me ask you this question. Go ahead.
Well, you also have to think about, and just like in any profession, are you keeping up to date on things? What kind of continuing education are you doing? That's why when I recommend therapists to my clients, I always say get a trauma therapist, because I know that the trauma therapist is trained in trauma, and everyone that comes to me has experienced trauma. So you have to do your homework on the background of the person that you're going to. And in fact, one of the marriage counselors, after my book came out, he reached out to me and he apologized because he missed it. He said that he really thought that my ex was being sincere, and everything that he was saying about the marriage. And he apologized for missing the signs. And so today he's very in tune to that. When people come to him, he can see the signs within the relationship. And he actually just recommended my book to a woman yesterday. So, people miss things. Like I said, it comes into what kind of continuing education you're doing and how you are keeping yourself up to date on the latest training.
Let me ask you this question. Do you, and this doesn't or might not apply to you, obviously, but do you adhere to the facts, or what is said by many different divorce attorneys is that anywhere between 75 and 80% of divorces are filed by women? Would you agree with that number, or have you ever heard that number in the past?
I have not heard that number in the past, but I wouldn't be surprised.
So everything that I've read and researched, 49% of marriages fail, which people always say 50-50, so that's rounding it up. And that 75 to 80% of marriages are filed by the woman. My only issue with that, and I wanted to hear your take on it, is that if it's 50% of the marriages are failing, it should be 50% filing and 50% on both sides filing. I guess my issue with it, and I've listened to people, even from my own mother. My mom told me a story about how she was considering leaving my dad because he used to go out and play pinochle on Wednesdays. I said, "You're going to leave Dad for that?" She's like, "Yeah, I was being dumb." And it's kind of like, yeah, that would be kind of dumb. I know several people currently right now going through divorce. When you ask them, why are you getting a divorce? And you hear what they're saying. And a lot of it is, if you talk to people who have been married, I'm sure your parents can attest, is the expectation of what marriage is. Having a roommate is hard. Having a roommate that you're with, obviously a marriage, is even that much harder. You're sharing money, you're sharing space, you're sharing personalities, you're sharing thoughts and dreams in every aspect. And sometimes the expectation, and I just wonder, what are your thoughts and I asked you the question earlier, and like you said, the women who come to you are not in that category. But do you think that possibly out of that 75% of women, that some of them are maybe jumping the gun to filing marriage or filing divorce, for a reason that, he keeps his clothes, he lays dirty clothes around the house, or he keeps toothpaste in the sink. He never turns off lights. What are your thoughts on that?
So I don't know what the percentages would be, but I do know that a lot of women stayed in marriages because you were supposed to put up with anything. COVID highlighted a lot of things. When we went into quarantine and people were in abusive relationships, that's when people were stuck. They had to deal with more abuse than they were enduring when we were not in quarantine, when they were able to get out of the house and go to a job. When they got stuck in quarantine, it just amped up the abuse rate. So when we got out, you saw divorces ramp up, right? People know now.
I know for a fact. That's true. I deal with divorce attorneys in my business, and I sell to them. In business, I did a lot of business in 21 and 22 because their business picked up, which in turn made my business pick up. So I agree with that, but not really. I'm not talking about COVID, but do you think it's possible that 75 to 80%, I don't know what the percent, let's just wrap, maybe 10%, maybe 20%, where someone, I did a podcast with a girl not too long ago, and I asked her, what, if you had to do it all over again, would you have gotten a divorce? And she said, probably not, And so do you think that sometimes women might jump the gun at divorce when maybe thinking that's taking a step back at what am I requiring, what am I asking, maybe makes sense, maybe not. And I could say the same to men if men were filing in droves the way women, but that's not really the case.
Okay, well, I wasn't finished answering the question. I started with COVID because I think that is a good, that's a good point to make, because COVID highlighted how many abusive relationships there are. There are more people in abusive relationships than many people even knew about. And a lot of people, especially women, didn't know they were in abusive relationships because they didn't know emotional abuse is abuse. It's domestic abuse. It's
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Violence. So when they started getting educated and they found out they were being treated poorly and they didn't have to put up with it, yes, they added to the divorce rate as well. Now, do I believe that there are some people that just don't want to put up with, their ex didn't put the towel away the correct way, or they just don't want to live with anybody anymore? Yes, I think that occurs also, but I think that that's a lower percentage than the women that have been in these relationships where they have been demeaned, belittled, degraded, and they just don't want to deal with it anymore. And so they're getting divorced for peace of mind.
What do you think the state of and of relationships is now in 2024, based on, like you said, your parents are still married, my parents are still married. Growing up in elementary and high school, I would say the majority of my friends' kids' parents were together, whereas my daughter's friends, probably it's the opposite. The majority of kids are separated. And it's very rare that they have a parent that's, same mom, same dad situation. What is your feeling based on all this on the state of relationships today? What is your thought? How do you think it impacts society?
How do I think that relationships are impacting society, or how is society impacting?
Well, I think both. I think my question is more, let me rephrase it. I guess, in my opinion, a society that has less relationships, I think Chris Rock made a joke of, you want to be in a neighborhood where women don't work. You don't want to go in a neighborhood that work. You want to see women pushing strollers and drinking Starbucks versus men just on the corner with nothing to do with a job. And so I guess in society, do you feel that a society with more relationships is better? And do you think that's the case in 2024?
Do I think that a society with relationships is better? I don't.
More committed, with more committed relationships.
I don't think, being a single woman, I'm not going to sit here and say we need more relationships for our society to be better. Again, I think it comes down to the individual person. I think that we need more people in society that have empathy, that actually care about other people and not hurting other people. That's what I think we need a society of. Relationships is a bonus. If you can find someone that has those similar values, that's a bonus. I think today with dating and these dating apps, it has made people too available to others. So it is hard to actually find a relationship with someone because you got this smorgasbord of women and men on all of these dating apps. So the stories that I hear over and over from my friends is, I'm talking to such and such, but in the third conversation, he's asking me for sex, because they have all of these people readily available to them on their phones. So they're just off the rip asking these type of questions. They're not actually trying to get in a relationship, which a lot of women in the dating world are trying to find. The men are actually just looking for a sex partner to add to his multiple sex partner list. So technology, I think, has hurt us a lot from a relationship standpoint, because we don't really meet people out on the street anymore, at the grocery store, at church, the old ways that we used to do it. A lot of people are meeting online, and people can hide behind a camera or a phone, what have you, and present themselves as one thing when they're actually really something else, and it's something negative.
So I would agree with that about technology affecting relationships the way it has. Two things to that. I think, one, you're right. Men are probably chasing sex more than the relationship. But I also think that the women today are giving up the sex more instead of waiting for the relationship. Because if you go back, men used to have to put in work to get relationships back in the day. Now you can ask for, hey, show me a picture of your tits or whatever, and the woman does it. So if the woman didn't do it, the men probably, the reason why he's asking, because he asked someone last week and she did it. And
she did it. And I think that's an age factor as well. Did it. Correct. I think a lot of your 20s, it's mainly the 20-year-olds that I hear anyway. I can only speak for my experience. It's a lot of the 20-year-olds that are having sex very quickly, giving up the nude pictures and all that. People in my age span, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Yeah, we're shutting those down.
No, you're right. You're right. You're right. You guys are probably not doing this to younger ones, but the problem is you're still competing with the younger ones
In
because
some
when it comes
instances,
to a relationship,
yeah.
yeah, and that's the I don't think that women were told when this whole experiment took place of allowing women to kind of move like men in society. I don't think that was really explained to them that you're going to be competing against your younger self. See, as a 50-year-old man, well, 51-year-old man, if I was on the dating market, I would not be competing with a 25-year-old man because I have knowledge and wisdom and assets. When I was 25, I was broke, and I had no knowledge. And what a woman looks for is out of a man is assets and knowledge and wisdom and experience. Well, I have all that. I didn't have that at 25. So he's not my competition. Matter of fact, I don't mind helping him because he's not my competition. So if a young G comes to me and says, hey, in life, blah, 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 what should I look for in a woman, blah, blah, blah. How do I get what you have, a wife and a home and kids? I don't have a problem. I don't know if older women do that to younger women because that's their competition. That 45-year-old woman is competing for the 45-year-old man who's also looking at the 35-year-old woman or maybe the 30-year-old woman.
Like I said, I can only speak from my experience, and I'm not competing with anybody in their 20s. Men that I am speaking to and I'm interested in are not interested in the 25-year-old because we are connecting on the intellectual level, and a 25-year-old doesn't have the intellect that I have or the experience that I have. So there is no competition for me and the people that I date.
Do you think that's important, in a partner?
It's important for you to understand what your own standards and values are. If you don't have standards going into dating, then yes, you're just going to be picking up any Joe Schmo off the street and then find out later on that you don't like what you're dealing with. So once I got out of my marriage, I set my standards high. I set my standards as to what I was going to accept and not going to accept. And I maintain those standards whenever I meet someone. And if you don't meet those standards, then we don't date. We might not even talk after the first conversation.
No, not your standards, the guy's standards. Because, and in essence, like what you said, you say guys are looking for sex. You're right. And that's kind of on the woman, whether she gives it or not. A man doesn't get
standards. Yeah. If you're giving it up on the first date, then I question what your standards are. Yeah.
True. But from a guy's standpoint, a guy's looking for sex. A woman chooses to give it up or not give it up. But you just said earlier, a woman is looking more for commitment and relationship. And that is true. And that's typically to the guy. I chose to buy a ring. She didn't buy me a ring. I bought her a ring. I talked to her dad. I got on one knee. So in essence, she kind of had to prove herself to me because I did date women before my wife and they never got the ring. So technically she had to prove herself to me. So isn't it, from a relationship standpoint, a woman kind of has to prove herself to the man?
No, I don't believe in that. I mean, that's your preference and that's what you chose to do, but everyone's not like that.
So you know women who have proposed to men?
I still believe traditionally men should propose to women, but I don't think that a woman should have to prove herself to a man. I think if you make a connection with someone and you equally like that person, you share the same values, you have the same life, there's a connection there.
Right. That's all. Well, that's all a part of proving. That's all a part of.
When you say prove yourself to me, what I see is you have the power and I have to come up to your standard in order to get your attention. When you say something like prove. And
you know what? And it falls the same for the sex. For a woman giving up what's between her legs, a guy has to prove himself to her. She shouldn't just give it up, right? Didn't Steve Harvey say, wait 90 days? Well, what's happening in those 90 days? You are proving yourself to me that you are worthy of what's down here. I want to see how you move. I want to see how you act. I want to see how you open the door. I want to see how you take. He's proving himself. Why? Because she holds all the credit in that department. So hey, how did you treat my mama when I introduced you? How did you talk to my friends? You have to court me for me to do that. And you know what? It doesn't change when you're in a relationship. In a marriage. Even in a marriage, a guy still has to do that. It's very easy for the wife to say, I don't feel like it. And you know what? If she doesn't, then it is what it is. And so what does that guy have to do? You know, a friend of mine a long time ago, he had been married for 20 plus years, and I was 2 to 3 years in. He said to me, you know, you still have to work at making your woman happy. You don't think it's not like a waterfall, so you just turn it on. And I was like, what does that mean? I'm married. I shouldn't have to. He goes, no. I'm not saying you have to go out there. I'm not saying you have to go out there and do it and spend a lot of money and all that, but you still have to be intellectual with her and talk to her. Why? Because she holds the keys to that. So you can't just come in and say, let's do it. You have to, how was your day? What's going on? Maybe let's go do this. Let's go run to the mall together. Hey, let's go get a slice of pizza. You have to do all that. And then come Friday. So I say all that to say, yeah, a woman kind of does have to prove herself. And let's not get it twisted. All women want a man who's going to provide and protect, right? No woman wants to stand in front of her man and say, I got you, baby. I will protect you from the bad guys out there. No woman does that. You want a man to provide and protect?
I don't do generalities because I think
that's not generality. That's all women. All women. When somebody wait a minute. When somebody is trying to break in at 2 a.m., no woman says, I got this. You stay here, baby. She's going to nudge him and say,
like I said, you're entitled to your opinion, but I think that there are some women that actually are okay with that. I don't think that we can say all women want the same thing, because all women do not fall into the same bucket.
All women do not, but I think, okay, well, if I say majority, would that be better?
You could, yep, that's better than saying all.
The majority of women out there want a man who will provide and protect. The majority of women will want a man that when I come to you with a problem, you help me find a solution. So being that the case, I think that the majority of men want to make sure that a woman is worthy of doing those things. And so therefore, a woman kind of does have to prove herself, just like I had to prove myself to my wife. Whether or not she was going to give me something, I'm still going to be here. I'm not trying to just hit and run. I actually want to be with you. I actually want to get to know you. I actually want to learn about you. So I'm not just trying. I had to prove myself. And then she proved herself back. And it was like, damn, you know what? I could rock with her for a long time. Like I could actually see me, because it's easy for a woman to get a man, meaning sexually. I mean, you walk into a bar, you look pretty, you say to a man, let's go. And most men are going to say, okay. I think the easy part, that's the easy part. The hardest part is to keep that man there for you. And that's where you get into the stimulating, the conversation, are we compatible? You know, when a woman does have sex with a man, I'm speaking from a man's standpoint, you want a man that's like, yeah, I like to have sex with you, but I also like to be with you after that. I like to be with you just on a Saturday afternoon. That's what will make a man commit to you. And so therefore, the woman kind of does have to, and it might sound harsh, but you know what? It's just as harsh that I have to go down at 2 a.m. with the Glock to see who's breaking in the house, and I might lose my life. But guess what? I'm willing to do that. We're going to see if we can get her back. But if not, put in the comments. I hope I wasn't too harsh. Maybe I was. We are better together. And sometimes it's a challenge to look at relationships from all aspects. I'm CRJ.